Welcome to our 6th episode of Interruption of the Han Dynasty by Wang Mang, Establishment of the Xin Dynasty. Let's begin our new episode. If the Xin Dynasty had a sound, it would be the creaking of timber under too much weight, a structure appearing grand but stressed far beyond what its foundations could bear. This is the story of that final strain, the pressure that cracked an emperor's dream. The empire Wang Mang built, or rather reshaped by force, still looked magnificent from a distance. The imperial seals shone with lacquer, the palace walls shimmered in fresh gold, and ministers bowed in elaborate choreography as court rituals repeated with the precision of a machine. But behind those ceremonial veneers, China was drifting into its most dangerous state, silent discontent. The kind that grows slowly, like water swelling behind a dam. Wang Mang, convinced that he was restoring ancient virtue, now issued edicts with an almost feverish devotion. He believed the laws of the Zhou dynasty were not merely moral guidelines, but a sacred blueprint, a timeless geometry that could recut society itself. If something was wrong with the empire, the problem was never the law. It was the disobedient people. What Wang Mang failed to see was that people were not ancient texts. They were breathing, starving, angry, and armed. The first severe warning came not from rebels, but from the sky. Reports began arriving from border counties. Fields flooded under relentless rains. Granaries collapsed from moisture rot. Rivers overflowed their banks. And in some areas, insects descended like living storms, stripping crops to the roots. Natural disasters were routine in ancient China, but their timing mattered. Under a new dynasty, under a reformist emperor, they were interpreted not as weather, but as omens. Taxes had risen. Families had lost land. Merchants had fled. Troops were restless. And now heaven itself seemed to be voicing dissatisfaction. For Chinese farmers steeped in Confucian cosmology, this was unmistakable. Heaven had withdrawn the mandate. Wang Mang panicked, but not in a way a modern leader would. Instead of improving disaster relief or adjusting taxes, he ordered more rituals, more sacrifices, more divination readings. His counselors performed ceremonies to appease heaven, burning incense until the palace halls were thick with smoke. It reassured no one. In the countryside, hungry families muttered that the spirits were finally judging the emperor. That murmuring soon turned into something far louder. But the spark did not come from famine alone. It came from the emperor's most ambitious reform, land nationalization, which had sounded noble, but proved disastrous. The laws said that all land belonged to the state and would be redistributed equally. In practice, it meant old landowners resisted. Local officials ignored orders. Poor farmers grew suspicious. Corruption spread like wildfire. Then came the coinage reform. Wang Mang minted new coins, confiscated old coins, and enforced the switch under penalty of law. But his new currency was poorly made and widely counterfeited. Merchants abandoned markets. Prices surged. Trade froze. People began to hoard. People began to whisper. People began to choose sides. At first, these sides were small: village militias, clan alliances, smugglers, starving bands of peasants seeking food. But then the violence began to spiral. Villages attacked tax collectors. Local officials defected to the rebels. And in the heartland, a name emerged, one that would shape the future of China. The Red Eyebrows. They were not a formal army, but a movement, born from desperation and superstition. Floods had destroyed the Yellow River Basin, drowning homes and ruining farmlands. Thousands of families displaced by the disaster banded together into roaming groups. to recognize one another, and perhaps to terrify their enemies. They painted their eyebrows bright red, the color of blood and wrath. Some said the red symbolized fire against water. Some said it was to invoke spirits. Others said it was simply to become unrecognizable to government informants. Whatever the reason, the effect was unmistakable. Reports spread across the countryside like rumors of ghosts. The red eyebrows are coming. At first, Wang Mang dismissed them. He called them disorganized rabble. An early confrontation seemed to support this view. Xin military detachments scattered small groups easily. But Wang Mang failed to grasp the truth. Every time a rebel group was destroyed, two more sprang up. Every time a red eyebrow was killed, the survivors swore vengeance. Desperation breeds not mere rebellion, it breeds conviction. The government's biggest mistake came when it attempted to suppress the rebels through brute force. Tax burdens were raised to fund the army, even while famine widened. Draft quotas increased. Young men fled the census, choosing rebellion over conscription. Families hid sons in caves or forests. Villages forged weapons in secret, and still the Xin government demanded more. Inside the capital, Chang'an, the court tried to pretend everything was stable, but ministers whispered in corridors, eunuchs traded rumors, astrologers delivered cryptic warnings. Palace guards stayed awake at night listening for distant unrest. One morning, the emperor received alarming news. An entire regional commandery had defected, not to a warlord, not to a foreign tribe, but to a descendant of the Han Dynasty, a young man named Liu Xiu, who claimed the mandate of heaven and had begun raising troops under the banner of restoration. This was not the red eyebrows. This was far more dangerous. Wang Mang had always known the greatest threat to his legitimacy came from the surviving branches of the Liu clan, the former imperial family. He had executed many, exiled others, and kept the rest under surveillance. But Liu Xiu had escaped notice. He was intelligent, mild-mannered, and outwardly unambitious, precisely the kind of man who slips through the cracks until it is too late. As word spread that a Han prince had risen, thousands of families who had suffered losses under the Xin reforms flocked to him. They wanted the old system back, the one they had understood, the one that, despite its flaws, had felt predictable. The red eyebrows and Liu Xiu were not allies, but they shared a common enemy. They were two storms heading towards the center. And at that center was Wang Mang, a scholar emperor standing alone on a collapsing stage. The emperor's advisors now urged immediate compromise, repeal the harshest reforms, restore old currency, reduce taxes, pardon rebels. But Wang Mang refused. His stubbornness hardened into paranoia. He ordered more executions, more decrees, more punishments. He saw betrayal everywhere, and in some cases, he was right. Reports came in of generals refusing orders, troops deserting, supplies failing to arrive, entire counties in open revolt. Still, Wang Mang clung to the belief that he could rectify the world through laws and punishment. He was not cruel by nature. He was blind, blinded by ideals, blinded by the belief that history could be rewritten by force of will. Meanwhile, the red eyebrows were no longer a scattered collection of starving families. They had become a full-fledged insurgent army. They punished corrupt officials. They distributed food from seized granaries. They preached that heaven's wrath fell not on the people, but on a wicked emperor. And people listened. Women, farmers, former soldiers, merchants ruined by reforms, youths angry at the draft. Entire clans joined the cause. In a time of chaos, the red eyebrows offered not stability, but solidarity, a sense of being part of something rising, while the empire crumbled. The emperor, desperate to re-establish control, appointed new generals, reorganized regional commands, and tried to rally loyalists, but every appointment triggered new rivalries. Commanders fought each other for power, ignoring the rebels. Officials lied in reports to avoid punishment. Troops plundered civilian homes more often than they attacked insurgents. The empire was not simply struggling, it was unraveling. By the time imperial messengers reached Chang'an with the news of a major defeat in the east, the court was already in panic. But now the reports were catastrophic. Entire Xin armies had vanished, not into enemy hands, but into the ranks of the rebels. Wang Mang could no longer distinguish friend from foe. Even inside the palace, loyalties were shifting. Officials debated whether the emperor should abdicate for the sake of the people. Some proposed fleeing the capital. Others quietly opened negotiations with Liu Xiu, preparing to surrender when the time came. Wang Mang ignored them all. He believed he was still one decree away from restoring order, one more policy, one more reform, one more ritual. His faith in ideology had become a cage he could not escape. Then came the message that shattered everything. The red eyebrows had crossed into the Ganzhong region, the heartland of the empire, the gateway to the capital. By then, the once mighty Xin Dynasty was merely a shell. The bureaucracy was fractured. The military was unreliable. The people had turned away, and the mandate, as the chronicles later wrote, had drifted like smoke to another house. As rebel forces closed in, Wang Mang finally saw the truth he had avoided for a decade. He had not restored ancient China. He had broken the living one. The emperor, once hailed as a model of virtue, now stood on a balcony overlooking the city he had sworn to transform. Below him, smoke rose from villages preparing for siege. The air trembled with tension, and the distant sound, the dull, rhythmic pulse of thousands of marching feet, grew louder. Chang'an was no longer the capital of a dynasty. It was the target of an approaching storm. And as that storm drew closer, Wang Mang's world, built not on strength, but on ideals, prepared to collapse. Dear viewers, thank you all for watching our 6th episode. The 7th episode will be uploaded very soon. Please stay tuned, subscribe, like, comment, and share to encourage us.